decision to drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki is to this day a very controversial topic in American history. Many historians debate on whether or not it was ethical to use nuclear warfare on civilian populated areas. The decisions to drop the atomic bombs began with victory in Europe. The Allies defeated the Germans and Germany surrendered unconditionally. After the war in Europe, which ended May 7, 1945, the United States began to prepare the public for the invasion of Japan. The United States' original plan was to have a large-scale invasion of Japan. This was called Operation Downfall. Operation Downfall had two parts to it, Operation Olympic and Operation Coronet. Operation Olympic was intended to capture the southern third of the southernmost main Japanese island, Kyushu, with the recently captured island of Okinawa to be used as a staging area. Later in the spring of 1946, Operation Coronet was the planned invasion of the Kanto Plain near Tokyo on the Japanese island of Honshu. Air bases on Kyushu captured in Operation Olympic would allow land-based air support for Operation Coronet. If downfall had taken place, it would have been the largest amphibious operation in history. Japan's geography made this invasion plan quite obvious to the Japanese. They were able to predict the Allies' invasion plans accurately and were able to adjust their defensive plan, Operation Katsugo, accordingly. The Japanese planned an all-out defense of Kyushu, with little left in reserve for any subsequent defense operations. Casualty predictions varied widely but were extremely high. Depending on the degree to which Japanese civilians would have resisted the invasion, estimates ran up into the millions for Allied casualties. Operation Downfall was scrapped after the United States had successful nuclear bombs go off in New Mexico, July 16, 1945. The nuclear bombs were created through the Manhattan Project, which was a research and development project that produced the first nuclear weapons during World War II. Some of the world's top scientists at the time were a part of the Manhattan Project. All employees were sworn to secrecy of the project in an attempt to keep the knowledge of the United States having nuclear weapons out of the hands of other countries. The Manhattan Project had many sites across America and Canada. Two types of atomic bombs were developed during the war. A relatively simple gun-type fission weapon made using uranium, which was the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, named Little Boy, and a more complex plutonium implosion-type weapon, which was dropped on Nagasaki, known as Fat Man. The first successful nuclear explosion went off in New Mexico. The test was called the Trinity Test. Truman knew that Japan wouldn't surrender no matter the amount of casualties they sustained. This was one of many reasons why Truman decided to drop the atomic bombs. There were many factors influencing Truman's decision to drop the atomic bombs, the largest of which was saving American lives. Japan was losing the war, but the United States knew that they wouldn't surrender until they caused large amounts of casualties to Americans. Another reason was to justify the cost of the Manhattan Project. The United States' estimated funding of the Manhattan Project was $1,899,604,000. Truman was also influenced by wanting to impress the Soviets, because the Cold War was right around the corner from 1945. Lastly, he did it for revenge for Pearl Harbor. When a general raised objections to the use of the bombs, Truman responded by noting the atrocities of Pearl Harbor and said that when you have to deal with a beast, you have to treat him as a beast. In regards to the dropping of the atomic bomb, Truman also stated, "I realize the tragic significance of the atomic bomb. It is an awful responsibility which has come to us. We thank God that it has come to us instead of our enemies, and we pray that He may guide us to use it His ways and for His purposes." When Truman heard that the nuclear bomb was a success in New Mexico, he put his plan to use nuclear warfare to hasten the war. Nagasaki was originally not the target for the second nuclear bomb. It was option 2, and ended up being the target because there were too much cloud cover over the original target, Kokura. Nagasaki was picked as the backup plan because it was one of Japan's largest seaports and had a wide range of industrial activity. Nagasaki made ships, military equipment, and other war materials. When the United States did bombing runs, they would fly over Japanese cities, dropping leaflets to warn citizens that they were going to be bombing these cities. Before they dropped a nuclear bomb on Japan, the United States did not drop the leaflets. They didn't warn the citizens before the bombing because they wanted to maximize psychological shock. The first nuclear bomb was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. 80,000 people were immediately killed. The strike order was approved, and 3 days later, the United States dropped the bomb on Nagasaki. The bomb was named Fat Man and weighed 10,800 pounds and was 10 feet 8 inches long. Fat Man was dropped by a B-29 A-40 MO Superfortress. The plane was called Boxcar. Boxcar was piloted by Major Charles W. Sweeney, who was the commander of the 393rd Bombardment Squadron. The plane was co-piloted by First Lieutenant Charles Donald Albury. There were 13 men on board of Boxcar during the nuclear bombing of Nagasaki. When Fat Man was dropped, it immediately killed roughly 146,000 people, nearly doubling the casualties from Hiroshima. A Japanese report on the bombing characterized Nagasaki as like a graveyard with not a tombstone standing. It is estimated that an additional 60,000 to 80,000 people died due to radiation sickness or burns from the atomic bomb. Japan announced their surrender on August 15th and formally signed their surrender on September 2nd, marking the end of World War II. Hiroshima and Nagasaki are presently both booming cities again, just like they were before the atomic bombs. Although around 200,000 people died because of the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, most of which were innocent civilians, their deaths were not for nothing. The men and women killed during these bombings made it so millions of people weren't killed because of the Japanese stubbornness to surrender. The decision to use nuclear weapons was a very difficult one to make, but a necessary one.